I've lived in Bradford for 23 years. I know I don't sound it, but I have, and that had such a big impact on how people feel about the city, their pride of place belonging. But I'm excited for Bradford now. We are reaching a tipping point, and one of our studies, we've got the biggest study of adolescent health in Europe, right? We have 20,000 teenagers who are working with us, and it's so exciting because we're asking them, what do you think of the place in which you live? And they're like, proud of it. Yeah. You know, 60% of teenagers say they're proud to live in Bradford, and that's brilliant.
Hello, welcome to Talking Place, the podcast bringing placemakers and storytellers together to talk about place. I'm your host, Tanisha Rafiuddin. I am the founder of Concept Culture, a creative agency in London, passionate about creating purposeful brands and telling powerful stories. This episode was recorded live at the Bradford Showcase at UKREiiF 2026 in Leeds. Shout out to our hosts, P+HS Architects, for their generous hospitality. What if the city itself was part of the prescription for our health and well-being? The evidence is growing that the places we build, the air we breathe, the green spaces we access, the buildings we spend our days inside, all of it together shapes how long we live, how well we feel, and how fully we participate in public life. But the decisions that shape our built environment, what gets funded, what gets planned, what gets built, rarely treat health as a serious design brief. In this episode, I sit down with 3 people who are building the case and the practice for a healthier built environment. Professor Rosie McEachan has spent 2 decades tracking the lives of thousands of Bradford families through the Born in Bradford study. Abigail Scott Paul from Heatherwick Studio is leading Humanise, a global campaign to put human experience back at the center of architectural design. And James Almond from P+HS Architects, who are delivering NHS healthcare environments here in Bradford that prove what is possible when design is taken seriously. All right, let's talk place. Welcome to the Talking Place podcast.
Hi. Thank you.
Hi.
And so we're here at the Bradford Showcase in Leeds for UKREiiF 2026. And we're talking about creating healthy places and essentially better lives. And as we know that 85% of our health is determined on where we live, and that's very much the built environment. And so let's discuss what it actually takes to create healthy places in not just Bradford, but anywhere in the world. But before we dive into that, I'd love for our audience to get to know you. So if you could just introduce yourself.
I'm James Almond. I'm the MD of P+HS Architects. We've got a vested interest in delivering a lot of healthcare buildings in Bradford.
It's great to be here. Thanks for the invite. My name is Rosie McEachan. I'm a researcher, actually. I look at public health and how we can keep families healthy and happy. And in Bradford, we follow the lives of over 60,000 Bradford residents over time to really understand how the places we live shape our health.
Hi, I'm Abigail Scott Paul. I'm Global Head of the Humanise Campaign. We're a campaign calling time on bland, boring development in cities because we know it's bad for people's brains, bad for people's bodies, and bad for people's behaviours. So we're calling for much more joyful, engaging, and more human buildings and cities.
Excellent, thank you all. So Rosie, let's start with you and the research that you've done. So Born in Bradford, as you've said, has been tracking thousands of children and families for over 2 decades. So what is the single most important thing that the evidence has revealed about how the places we build affect the people who live in them?
I think the key insight is that the places in which we live and the spatial attributes of our environments are absolutely influencing the health of our populations. And I think what's important for me is to think about this angle of inequality. Now, we know, right, in the towns and cities across the UK, we know that there are families who are living in areas of very high deprivation. This is a problem for Bradford, but this is a problem for across the UK. And what's happening for those families who are potentially already experiencing financial insecurity and are vulnerable to ill health is that they're also also trapped in these environments which are also damaging their health. So, these families are often living in areas where we've got loads of cars, loads of traffic, high pollution. Families don't have nice places to play. They don't have nice buildings. They don't have places where they can relax and socialise. And what that's meaning is that it's affecting their mental health and their physical health. And we've even shown the impact of exposures in the environment on children's DNA. So it's a terrible problem, and it's not fair. And this inequity that we have in our cities is something that we really need to address if we are to give everybody the chance for a healthier and fairer future. So that's what we push for. We push to make our architects and our decision makers really take note of that evidence and think and challenge them to say, right, how can we make our cities healthier places for families?
So, and what does Bradford know about the health of its citizens that other cities may not?
So because we've been collecting loads of information on our families over time, it gives us a really good picture of the factors that influence health. So we have, since babies have been born, collecting information about not only about their health and well-being, their lifestyle, but also their healthcare use, their mental health, prescriptions, all of that really rich health information. And we've been able to use that evidence to quantify the impact of the built environment on health. So for example, we know that in Bradford, 1/3 of children's asthma cases are due to traffic-related pollution, and that's in part due to the way that the city has been planned and how cars have priority. We've shown that mums who are living in the greenest areas of the city, where they have lots of lovely parks and green spaces, in pregnancy they are 25% less likely to report symptoms of severe depression than those families who are living in the less green areas. And that all has an economic cost as well. So much of the illness caused by the environments in which we live is completely preventable, but yet we will be having people who are off sick, kids who can't go to school, and that's not only bad for those families, but it has a knock-on impact on the economy as well. So it seems like a no-brainer to me, and I think we've been lucky in Bradford because we do have the data, we've got the evidence, and that's meant we can go to our local authority, our combined authority, and say, right, come on guys, we need to do something to address this. And you can see some of the examples of the great changes that have happened because we've been able to make the case, the economic case for it.
Yeah. And James, healthcare architecture is a sector with the most direct evidence that building design affects human health outcomes. So what is the most powerful piece of evidence that you have encountered from your projects?
Well, there's a project close to Rosie's heart in Bradford too. We sort of did some work with the community services in Bradford to create a new sexual health clinic in the centre of Bradford. We took it out of the hospital where people were struggling to present and the community were not engaging with that space. So we created a building that was in the high street between HSBC and the Yorkshire Building Society, and presentation rates went up 85%. And it allowed the community to engage with that service and engage in how they utilised that in a way that takes away the stigma of, I've got to go to hospital, I've got to go to this building where I'm sick or I'm poorly, and the stress and anxiety that comes with it, to create it into a space where it just becomes part of the everyday. So healthcare becomes part of your everyday, and it's something that Rosie talks about how you engage with people and how you engage with a place, which allows you to think, healthcare doesn't have to be stressful, it doesn't have to be challenging, and it helps grow the community because it takes that stigma away. And that's what we're now moving on to with the other projects we're doing across Bradford too. So we're building off that and sort of working with the Mental Health Trust and the Acute Trust and then the Airedale Trust about how we deliver their healthcare systems across the wider community of Bradford and all of Airedale, and making it a better place for people to access and have that ease of access, and to make the buildings something that doesn't have that stigma, doesn't have that sort of feeling of institutionalized care or anything else.
Yes. I mean, from a young age, we're taught prevention is better than cure, right?
Yeah.
So why are we waiting for the nth moment and the hospital and the healthcare system to take care of us? Why aren't we starting from ground zero, which is where we live, where we go to school, where we go to work? So what design decisions genuinely improve health outcomes?
We look at how we engage with stakeholders, how we engage with the community, how we engage with the design, to ensure that the design becomes part of something which adds benefit to that healthcare system. Buildings are great in a way, but they can be very formal, they can be very bland, very scary if you don't access them regularly. The building should be part of the wayfinder, it should be part of engaging people, it should be a part of making the space part of that healing environment, whether that's an inpatient facility, an outpatient facility, or a mental health facility. We're currently redesigning, and we just started on site, £65 million redevelopment of Linfield Mount, which is the mental health hospital in Bradford, which over the years has this stigma. It's been this hospital on the hill that people don't want to visit, and you don't go there and ever come out again. It's the sickness, it's like the Victorian institution. But we're creating this lovely, nice, light space. And I was speaking to the chief exec and the finance director yesterday, and we're saying, this is going to completely change how we as a trust have to work and how we engage with people and how it changes people's lives. So you can see how a building can change a whole health system and how they will then get the benefits from that in one simple project. You're thinking, well, that's the power of just one project, and we work with people across Bradford and we can change the health outcomes of one city and one part of the country and then the north, and then take over the rest of the world.
No, so then let's segue over to the Humanise campaign, a global campaign. So Abigail, what has the Humanise campaign taught you about creating healthy places?
Well, it's really clear that buildings have an emotional impact on people, and we're really focused, to your point about sort of inequality, the impact of buildings on our streets on everyday people, not just the people that go in and use that building. So, kind of we are really concerned about how our buildings on our streets impact us all as passers-by. And the research we've done is really focused on kind of emerging science from the field of neuroscience. We're working with some of the world's leading neuroscientists that is demonstrating that the kind of there is visual stress caused by the facades of certain types of buildings. So where there's repetitive, harsh, monotonous patterns, that can impact our brains, because our brains are wired to respond more naturally to, I don't want to speak for the scientists here, but respond better to patterns that you find in nature, for example.
Yeah, absolutely spot on.
So what we've seen throughout the world, and why we're a global campaign, is because in certain, new parts of cities all over the world, we're seeing the same bland, repetitive facades. So we know things like, putting trees in streets and parks lift us all up. We're focused on those edges of that public space and the buildings themselves, and how they look and feel from the outside. What, like you say, what they say to the people who are either using them but also walking past them. So there's kind of overwhelming, and I'm really, we're really excited about the opportunity of trying to demonstrate this real world health population outcomes from these science studies that are still quite small and emerging, but
it is so important that part of the problem we've got from the public health and the evidence side is that it's very difficult to get that evidence. You need studies like Born in Bradford that we have that have that infrastructure in a city over years, so that you can start to disentangle. And I just want to sort of reiterate how important it is, right? We know that impact, we can see that at the level of our brains. We can see that it increases cortisol, increases stress immediately, acutely, but there's also lots of indirect effects that our buildings and how our built environments look are having on us. So, uninviting places, uninviting facades where people don't feel like they can congregate, play, children can't play outside. These are then also having an impact on health. We have done research in Bradford that shows that when children are playing outside, the more they play outside, the better their mental health is. But we also find that 1 in 3 children are not playing outside at all because they don't find the places welcoming. Now, so it's clear there's an issue. The problem I think we have, and this is where I think we need to work collectively, is how are investment decisions made? How are we making the decisions about where we invest in cities? And I guess the elephant in the room here is that if we want to invest in cities to improve health, there will be an economic benefit to that. You might see that 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, 30 years down the line, and it'll be the NHS that will be thanking you for it.
Yes.
How does that square off with the budgets, the business, the economy? I don't know. I'm not an expert.
Well,
that's where I think, hang on, we've got this wrong. We're prioritising the wrong things, the short term over the long term. So I don't know how we fix that.
Yes.
we kind of obviously kind of developers have budgets, local authorities have budgets. We're very mindful of that. I guess what we're trying to argue for is put your budget where maximum people can benefit from that. So in our campaign, we talk about the three levels of a building, so the city scale, the street scale, and the door distance scale. So, kind of when you have got budget constraints, focus on kind of where people are going to interact most with that building, so at the door or street level distance, because you'll see, there's lots of amazing architectural photography, drone shots and videos of cities. We never see those views. We're down on the street.
Yeah, the plan. You don't read the plan.
No.
So your beautiful plan doesn't translate.
So think about how is somebody going to, I don't know, ring a doorbell, or how, kind of, and there's simple things you can do, tips and tricks, like create, in housing, for example, create a space outside the front of a door where people can make it their own and put their pots or whatever it is that can add that distinctiveness. So you can break up the monotony, you can allow people to really make them feel that this is their own unique home. So I think there are ways of doing it, and I think through the campaign, we're finding amazing developers who are able to take that risk and see the viability of doing so, and that's what we need to get better at, telling that story.
Indeed.
I agree. It's all about sort of being bold and taking that risk, and sometimes having the confidence to take that risk, but then you've got to understand your client, you've got to understand the budget and the constraints that come with it from a design perspective. But why should we not be bold? Because we're the ones that will change it from a design perspective or a public health perspective, or how that works.
And I think you can see the transformative impact that investing in places. So if you've walked through Bradford recently, it's a completely different city centre to what it was a few years ago, where there was 4-lane highways, roads bisecting the main. It's a garden, right? And what we find then is we've got our local communities, many from inner city parts of Bradford. The families are coming, they're using those spaces. Many of them are in back-to-backs. They don't have gardens. They're reclaiming that space, and that's what I want to see, that innovation and understanding that a bit of investment can unlock potential. It can unlock the potential of communities, and that's good for everybody. It's good for people, it's good for organisations, it's good for the economy, it's good for cities.
And I think it does require that leadership, either city, local authority, or the mayoral level. So we're currently putting together a guide for mayors on how they can use their soft and hard powers to really, kind of drive an ambitious approach to regeneration and development that is bespoke to that city, that speaks to that city's identity, and it kind of requires that long-term vision making, so that the built environment becomes a physical expression of that story it's trying to put out in the world and speak to its citizens. And it does require a long-term approach that can survive the political headwinds that we face. But who, kind of that the walk that you're talking about in Bradford City Centre, like no one would argue now that was a bad investment.
Yes, exactly. Now, in hindsight.
And it requires leaders to have courage to see that through. And you see it in cities like Paris. Look what the previous mayor, Anne Hidalgo, has done in Paris. Opened up parts of the city. Took away the car. I mean, I'm sure she faced some incredible opposition to that, but I think everyone would be thankful for that now.
But I just want to add then, so that what I find as a researcher really interesting is that when you are talking about decisions that affect cities, particularly decisions that might affect transport, you have a very loud vocal minority. So take the example in Bradford, we have one of the most ambitious clean air zones in the country, right? So it's the biggest outside London. There was a lot of nervousness about implementing that clean air zone. There was lots of people saying nobody wants it. But actually, we do the research with families. We find that when we ask them, 70% supported it. Before it was implemented, we've been able to show the impact on respiratory health in the city. We've been able to go back and say, actually, you're saving the NHS £30,000 a month, but actually it's unlocked all of this additional investment into regen. So there's a role for evidence definitely to help bolster the confidence of the decision makers, because as one of the implementers said to us, they're like, no one can argue with children's health, right? That's why we're doing it in Bradford, to reduce pollution for children's health. Are you going to argue with that? You know.
And I think we need to get better at getting that data and evidence. So you're lucky that the city is investing and partners are investing in that. But, you know, kind of when you think about private developers, they do a post-occupancy survey, but it's often asking the people who use that building, or, you know, the client, what they think of it. We're calling for actually post-occupancy surveys that are asking the community who walk past that building what impact that might have. So I think really understanding, you know, there might be other indicators, you know, you kind of have surveys around pride, and we know now that people are feeling disconnected, they're not feeling proud of their high streets, and it's becoming a political issue. We know this, let's harness that insight and design it in from the beginning.
I think one of the benefits we've got in Bradford is Rosie and the team and the research that we've got that hard evidence to actually quantify the benefit that's come of it. You go to some parts of the UK or other cities and you don't have that evidence to say this equates to this, which equates to this benefit, which is real, and it's not just anecdotal, and it's not something that somebody writes in a post-occupancy review.
It'd be interesting to know how Born in Bradford could help other cities, and especially globally, because I think it would be really, really useful if we could look at influencing through the work you've done.
I mean, that what we are aiming to do is to provide a bit of a model for how you can all work together. But a lot of the evidence that we create and others create, it is generalisable. It works just as well for Bradford as it will for Birmingham. So one of the things that we've been working on recently is with the local authority, thinking about regen in the city of Bradford. You know, there's various things that are on the cards that could be transformative for the potential. So what we're doing now is working with the teams doing the business cases to say, right, we will help you create an evidence-based theory of change, a logic model. We will show you what these wider benefits are. And this is all based on evidence and literature. And if we can help those decision makers keep those wider benefits in mind when they're making a decision about if they're going to fund that or where is it going to be, that's the type of influence we're trying to have. So maximise the co-benefit, maximise the health co-benefit. I want every development or every regen investment decision to have an element of, right, what's the impact on health inequalities? How could we make this even better? And to put it in the money terms, how can we get more bang for our buck? But I do think we need to get better. The health research field, we need to get better at talking in the economic terms. You know, and this is why it's so great to work with Abigail and James, and because we all sort of talk different languages, we all have a common vision, but we're not going to get anywhere if we work in silos.
And that's something we're trying to work with. The other stuff that we're doing in Bradford. And finding out about Rosie through the Bradford sort of redevelopment plan was a boon for us. And it's like, well, this helps us with that business case, with that benefits realisation, with the social value element of why are we doing this scheme? What's the purpose of this scheme? How does this all work? And we're in a lucky position. There's a untapped resource.
And I think there's also, you know, it's about working around like-minded people, like you say, that share a common goal, and for cities with a bold vision to be able to attract the right developer to that city. You know, a developer that really understands what that city is trying to achieve and what's important, and often what is important to people. And what we're finding out, there are developers out there, I think they get a bad rap, a lot of them. But actually the ones I met are developing with purpose. And yes, they've got to make it viable, but like we've said, if you create places where people want to hang out and dwell, there's going to be an economic impact on that for the cafes, for the shops that surround those buildings and streets. So, and you see it in King's Cross. I mean, that regeneration that's happened there, you know, kind of 10, 15 years in the making now, you would never argue against doing that now.
Yeah, we've got anecdotally the same thing with Bradford though. I remember working on the schools programme in Bradford 15, 20 years ago, and there was a big hole in the centre of town. And that hole was there for a long time. And families grew up and they had their childhood with a big hole in the centre of town. The hole's been filled, and that's led to ripple-on effect of wider development, which has led to all the stuff that Rosie talked about.
And do you know what's brilliant, right? Because I've lived in Bradford for 23 years. I know I don't sound it, but I have, and that had such a big impact on how people feel about the city, their pride of place belonging. But I'm excited for Bradford now. We are reaching a tipping point, and one of our studies, we got the biggest study of adolescent health in Europe, right? We have 20,000 teenagers who are working with us, and it's so exciting because we're asking them, what do you think of the place in which you live? And they're like, proud of it. 60% of teenagers say they're proud to live in Bradford, and that's brilliant. I bet we wouldn't have had that 10 years ago, but we still got a way to go. We need to make it 100%. We need to make people really happy about the place that they live.
Well, that was one of the things when the stakeholder engagement, when I was doing the schools, and it was like, what do you feel about your city? What do you feel about? Well, it's depressing. It's got a big hole in it. And when is it never going to end? And all the rest of it. So it has changed, and you're right. That we're rippling effect with other projects, which leads to better things. You see, with better buildings and better projects and better development, it all leads on to other things, and it leads to a more sort of a better society and a better community.
Our young people say, we want to stay in Bradford. We want to stay here. We're proud of it, but give us the infrastructure. And I think we haven't quite mentioned it yet, but it's about the buildings, it's about the places, but you have to look at the whole system. People don't experience their communities or places in isolation. So along with these fantastic buildings and these beautiful public realm, give us the transport. Let our young people get around, unlock that potential for economic growth.
On that though, we're sitting here in West Yorkshire, and mass transit is coming at some point. But where is a design conversation around that? Because it's not just the lines, it's also what's the station, the stops, how's that going to look and feel? How can we avoid the trams of West Yorkshire looking like every other tram anywhere else?
I think we've become a bit cynical in West Yorkshire about mass public transport, because I can remember 1996 being told, it's coming, it's happening. And then there was trolleybus, and then there was something else. And I think we've got to a point of cynicism until actually people see something move forwards beyond that step. Yes, we've got funding, but I think we still need to see that real green shoots.
If Northern Rail comes, that station's going to have to say a big fat hello. We do things differently in Bradford.
That will be that statement, you see, because
built different.
Exactly.
And again, if you speak to the young people, so we did a bit of work talking to young people about their aspirations and how easy is it to get around. They've got some brilliant ideas. They were telling us, why don't we get the buses and get them all in Hockney paintings, really give us a public transport system we can be proud of. So I love the idea of thinking it's not just about the design of the buildings, is it? It's about that whole
the whole experience.
How do we put our stamp our mark on it?
Is it Lisbon or that it markets itself on its trams, doesn't it? They're iconic. And I think there's a danger that you go anywhere in the world and the tram system's the same wherever, in Toronto as it is. And actually this is an opportunity to do something different, to help sell that vision of this region.
Be more Bradford.
Yes.
I love it.
I'm loving this energy, I'm loving this passion. And you're right, as a society, there are many polarizing issues. We talk about climate change, we talk about inclusivity, diversity, but health is something everyone agrees on. Who can argue against health and children's health? Or, and we're an aging society now, we're living longer, average health lifespan is 80 years. Some of us, those who are born today, are probably going to live 150 years.
But we're going backwards in some of those health statistics in parts of the cities.
So we've talked about evidence, we've talked about advocacy. Let's talk about delivery. So where do we think the power is sitting that is preventing the change that needs to happen?
Well, may I go first?
Yes.
But it's I sometimes feel I can be a bit provocative, but you have to sort of almost like I can come to this with completely fresh and independent eyes, right? Because research is very different.
You need to disrupt, Rosie.
Yeah, so I come and I look and I think, crikey, what is going on with all this siloed decision makings? When I look at things, I'm like, public health teams, they're in local authorities, that's great. But then you have planning, you have transport, you have housing. So I'm like, these guys aren't speaking to each other. Then I look at the government and the decision making and I'm like, oh crikey, those departments are not speaking to each other. So, Department for Transport aren't speaking to MHCLG or DLUC. And I'm like thinking, this is what we need to tackle. We need to break down these silos, because unless we don't do that, these guys aren't here. They don't care about the budgets being better for the NHS. It doesn't affect their budget. They've got all of those, milestones they have to tick. So that's what we need to do. We need to break that down. And crucially, we need to front and centre community voice, particularly those communities that are seldom heard, right? Because there's tons of communities that just don't get a look in. Young people are a particular example. How often are their voices taken into account when we're doing these planning decisions? So I don't know the answer, but I maybe I am trying to be disruptive, and I certainly, I think I am doing that in Bradford, and I hope everyone's okay with it. But it's like, come on, guys, you're missing the opportunity here. Why are you not taking that bigger picture?
I mean, to follow your provocative lead, we're sat here, there's 16,000 people at this conference. Where is the community voice in this? You can't get a ticket unless you pay for it. And all these decision makers are talking about investment in cities. And I don't know what panel we've got people who actually live in cities voicing what they think and feel about them. And we as a campaign are really passionate about centering the public's voice. So we do public opinion polling, and we know we did a poll of people living in England's post-war new towns, about how they think and feel about the buildings in them, and only 4% could describe them as even nice. And it showed a huge disparity between what they've been served and what they want for the future. And they want places that are characterful, that are meaningful. So we want to take that insight and really take it to the decision makers. But really, there needs to be a much bigger societal conversation about how important the built environment is to us every day. And it was interesting, that commission that's just been launched around connection and belonging. I wonder where the built environment is around that. I mean, I hate the word built environment, sorry. But this sector needs to get better at articulating what it can bring and what it can deliver for people. And we're talking about inanimate objects, aren't we? Infrastructure, buildings, bricks and mortar, but they have such a massive impact on the lives we lead and how they shape us as people and as our lives. So I think that for me is really starting to listen to what people are saying and just being able to respond to that, and then effective partnerships, like you say.
I think some other buildings are inanimate, but some of them are really of character.
Yeah, they can do. Well, that's what we're calling for.
That's what we're trying to get for. Yeah. For me, the whole thing about this is we seem to have forgotten about what the outcome is we're trying to achieve. We seem to have designed a perfect process to get from an A to B on the business case strategy.
Yeah, it's all about efficiency, right?
Yes.
It's not efficient. We're trying to define something as efficient, yet we'll define it as an 18-step process.
Yeah.
That's not efficient.
It's
4 steps, from A to B to C to outcome. Build the building. Build that, because you get the true outcome by building the building or building the sort of healthcare system in a city that allows that to happen, rather than going, we must stick it through the process. Great, but the process sometimes slows things down and stops things and hinders the good work, where people can just go, if we could just do this, or we could just spend this little bit of money, or we could just build this, it could really accelerate and speed things up. So my advocacy is really, let's cut out some of the red tape and all the stuff. Let's get to understand what the outcome is we're trying to achieve, because everybody wants things to get better. I've never met anybody that wants to make it worse or sort of keep things in stasis. But why do we take so long to get to that point?
But I think there is a danger, isn't there? This drive to build 1.5 million new homes and the 7 or 12 new towns, that this drive for efficiency will drive out that sort of understanding that we need these places to work in a meaningful way and boost the health and well-being.
We've got some brilliant people in this conference that we're really skilled, talented in terms of design or engineering or other ways of stitching a project together. Yet we seem to be hamstrung by just sticking it through a process and a sausage machine. So we do get the bland, we do get the normality, we do get the same thing, rather than going, here's the money, this is the outcome we want. Use your skills, use your talent, use your creativity, create something that really add value to this.
It's definitely that computer says no, isn't it?
It's a mindset shift.
The numbers don't work.
It's a mindset shift.
It's almost people are scared to actually go, will my boss tell me off? Will his boss tell him off? How do I protect everybody?
If we can show that there is this demand, and I think that's what City of Culture demonstrated, wasn't there? That actually Bradford is this incredible place with an amazing story to tell. They got their confidence to do that. Then the conditions will change, and those leaders in the sector will have to respond because people won't want to buy just ordinary, or people, kind of businesses won't come to set up and invest in cities that are identikit and look like anywhere else because no one else wants to be in those cities.
On that note, final thoughts. If you had one message for decision makers or the powers that be about creating better health outcomes in our places, what would that be?
I'd say be bold and be confident. Make a decision.
I would say you can make a change. Just do it.
Just do it, yes.
I would say focus on how buildings meet the street and can have that visual complexity that can really engage the passerby.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. This has been really enjoyable. Even though we're talking about a very serious subject like health that impacts everybody, like all of us, with people like you on the ground, I feel optimistic about the future of our places, certainly for Bradford and UK-wide and globally, as we're talking about global campaigns as well. So thank you so much for talking place with me.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to join the conversation on social media with the hashtag #TalkingPlace. I would also love for you to leave our podcast a review and subscribe to all our podcasts and YouTube channels so you don't miss an episode. There's so much more to explore when it comes to creating good places, and I'm excited to do a deep dive into other topics with you in our next episode. I'm Tanisha Rafiuddin, and it's been my pleasure to be your podcast host. Thank you for listening. See you again next time, where we'll continue Talking Place. Talk soon.